Hi, I'm Tammy Nasuti, registered dietitian with NorWest Co-op Community Health Center and Hans Kai. Choosing healthy foods in healthy amounts is something that's important for our well-being. So today we're going to talk about a tool that makes it super easy to choose foods in healthy amounts. This tool is called the plate method. And how the plate method works is essentially you take a plate and it's divided into 3 sections. Now I know at home your plate won't be pre-divided, so just visualize a line going down the center, dividing the plate into half, and then another line going through 1/2, dividing a side into 2/4. Now the largest part of the plate method is to focus on vegetables, specifically non-starchy vegetables, and these can be canned, fresh, or frozen. Some examples of non-starchy vegetables to fill this half of the plate with would be broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, peas, lettuces, tomatoes, beets, and it's even good to choose 2 different types of vegetables at each meal. The other sections on the plate are smaller. They're 2/4. 1/4 is meant for your grains and your starches and starchy vegetables. So some examples of what would be on this portion of the plate would be bread, buns, whole grain pastas, rice, barley, quinoa, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and corn. And then the last quarter of the plate would be for your meats and alternatives. So some examples of foods that would be appropriate for this portion of the plate would be lean meats, poultry, such as chicken and turkey, fish. It could be vegetarian meat sources, such as beans and lentils, tofu, or even eggs. So just to see it in another way, this is an example of a plate method that just shows you right away what should be on each portion of the plate. One thing to mention is that the plate you use for this should be about 8 to 9 inches in diameter. Anything bigger than that, we might end up putting more food on our plate than we actually need. Okay, so now that we've talked about what the plate method is, let's take a look at putting it into action. So over here, I have one example of a common meal, and you can see that the plate is somewhat divided. It's an imaginary line down the center. Half of my plate is vegetables. In this case, I have broccoli and I have carrots. Again, fresh, canned, or frozen, it doesn't matter what kind of vegetable you use. About 1/4 of my plate is a protein. In this case, it's a chicken breast. And then the other 1/4 of my plate is some brown rice. So this would make a nice plate method dinner. The other thing you can do with the plate method is also add on to your meal a milk product. So that could be milk or yogurt, and then add on a piece of fruit, berries, peach, apple, orange, banana, whatever your favorite is. Another thing you could do is do yogurt with berries on top and make almost a parfait for dessert. So another example of a meal using the plate method is shown here. Again, we've divided our plate in half, and on 1/2 have vegetables. Again, fresh, canned, or frozen work. In this case, we have carrots and we have peas. Then we've taken our other half and divided it into quarters. 1/4 has our grain and our starch. In this case, it's a baked potato. And then our meat portion is a pork chop. Again, you could add on a glass of milk and a piece of fruit. In this case, maybe we'll do some grapes. So some meals are not as easy to picture on your plate. Some foods contain multiple foods already mixed together. In this case, we would call it a combination food or a combination meal. For example, some meals already have your grain or your starch mixed or layered with your meat or meat alternative, or also called your protein. So these meals, it's harder to visualize what parts of the plate they're taking up because all those foods are already mixed together. So I have some examples here we're going to take a look at. One example here could be something along the lines for a lunch. Some common lunches might include a sandwich, maybe a leftover burrito, or a wrap. And you already have your tortilla shell and your meat on these meals. Essentially, that wrap with the meat filling is already about half of your plate. So you can just use that as a guide. This is half my plate. My starch and my protein is already taken up. What am I missing? You're just missing your vegetables on the side. All you need to do to that sandwich or that wrap or that burrito, go ahead and add on a half a plate of vegetables. Again, this could be a salad. This could be leftover cooked vegetables from supper. It could be cut up cucumbers, carrots, baby tomatoes, and some little bit of a dip on the side. And again, at lunch, you can absolutely go ahead and add in a milk product such as milk or yogurt and a piece of fruit to finish your meal off. So another example of a combination meal is something like spaghetti and meatballs. You can see here, we've divided our plate into half and filled it with half vegetables. In this case, we've got some sauteed up kale and some carrots. When you put your pasta on your plate, you want to visualize it taking up about half of the plate, and because there's meatballs and starch, it takes care of both the meat and alternatives and the grains and starches. So just to show you again how visualizing can work and match up to the plate method, here's an example right here. Half of the plate is vegetables, quarter of the plate is protein and starch. Again, in this situation, the protein and the starch are also making a half of the plate. And then don't forget, you can add on that milk alternative such as the milk or yogurt, and a piece of fruit such as grapes or bananas. Another mixed meal, which is an example of your starch and your protein being layered together instead of mixed together, is something like a lasagna. So with the lasagna, you can see mostly your noodles and your meat or your protein, along with some cheese and some sauce. But the vegetables really aren't prominent in this dish. So again, what do? Put your lasagna on about half of your plate, and then go ahead and fill the other half of your plate with some type of vegetable. Again, you can finish off the meal with that milk product or fruit. So all the meals we've looked at have been some common meals you might see at suppers and at lunches. I just want to let you know that this concept of the plate method can be used at breakfast. It's similar, but just looks a little bit different. At breakfast, again, you'll want to picture about a quarter of your plate being your protein. A common protein at breakfast might be eggs. Some people might also do some beans or maybe some tofu, but again, that would be about a quarter of your plate at breakfast. Then you would have about a quarter of your plate being your starch, which in this case is a piece of whole grain bread. It could also be an English muffin. Sometimes people do rice at breakfast. Then instead of a half of a plate of vegetables, we would focus on having about a serving of fruit. Now you can absolutely go ahead and have vegetables at breakfast, but it's just not as common. Now your fruit at breakfast can be fresh, canned, or frozen, and you can pick any fruit that you like. Oranges is an example, grapes, you can do banana, a peach, an apple, a pear, a plum, and then include some yogurt or milk on the side. And then that's a breakfast using the plate method. So the plate method can also be used for children. It's just that they're going to need a smaller plate because they don't need as many servings of food as an adult does. So let's just make an example of a breakfast on a smaller plate for a child. A quarter of our plate would be a protein such as an egg. Another quarter of our plate would be our starch. So in this case, it could be one slice of toast. It might even be a half of one, depending on the age of your child. And then about a quarter-ish of a plate would also be some fruit for the child. And then you could add on a glass of milk. And then you have a healthy meal using the plate method for a child. Let's just look at an example of something that could be a lunch or a dinner for a child. So what we'll do is we'll start by dividing our plate in half and filling it with vegetables. In this case, for this child's, let's say, lunch, we're going to give them some raw veggies such as peppers, tomatoes, and carrots cut up, and maybe we'd add a little dip on the side for them. And then we're going to go ahead and give them a little bit of chicken. And then for a grain, we could just go ahead and do another slice of toast or a half of a bun. And again, maybe we would add a milk product in the form of yogurt. And we could also add a little bit of fruit, such as grapes, and then there's another healthy meal for a child that can be used at lunch or supper. So that was the plate method. I hope you can see how easy it was and that you don't even need any extra tools. You can just go to your kitchen cupboard and grab your plate. So have fun planning your next meal.